Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is John and this is your Modern Tech Breakdown. Today I'm taking a look at the interview that the guys from the Acquired podcast did with Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg. Let's jump into it. All right, minor note here right off the top, but I just can't help myself. There's a terrible and obvious awkwardness of doing a podcast in public. Zuckerberg is awkward enough on his own, but I feel for him here. He is constantly looking around the room because he doesn't know where to look between the audience, the camera, the hosts. I mean, it's not really a big deal, but it's just quite noticeable. Just wanted to throw that in. But on to the interview. Let's start with a clip about Zuckerberg's regret over not having control of the underlying platform.
So when you think about, when we got started, okay, we're like a handful of kids. We didn't have the resources at the time to go define whatever the next computing platform is. And also, Facebook originally got started around the same time as a bunch of the early smartphones and those platforms got started. So we didn't really get to play any role in developing that platform. And one of the big themes, I think, for the next chapter of what we do is I want to be able to build what I think are sort of the ideal experiences, not just what you're allowed to build on some platform that someone else built, but like what is actually, if you can think from first principles, what is the ideal social experience? So I think what you would like to have is not a phone that you look down at that kind of takes your attention away from the things and the people around you, not just a small screen. I think what you ideally have is glasses.
Not just what you're allowed to build on someone else's platform. That, in a nutshell, tells you exactly what Mark Zuckerberg is going to be focused on for the next decade. He is absolutely driven to control Meta's destiny and not be beholden to Apple, Microsoft, or Google. And he sees the next major computing platform as being VR or AR. But is Meta the company to pull this off? Would Meta be able to build a product and operating system that people want? Meta has little to no presence in the professional lives, which is one way that technology platforms get off the ground. Do people want another operating system in their lives? Would people be willing to switch platforms in order to use a Meta VR product? I think Apple, Microsoft, and Google have an ability here to sway what VR platform people buy. If VR goes mainstream, there's probably a bunch of people that would pick a Vision Pro or a HoloLens just because it would be seamless in their digital lives. So I think Meta's got work to do if this is what they think the future is. And Mark hits the point again here later on in the interview. Check out this clip.
Well, I definitely, firsthand have a lot of experiences. We were like trying to build stuff on mobile platforms. And the platforms are just like, nah, you can't build that. Okay.
So Zuckerberg clearly understands the lesson and wants to avoid having to build exclusively on someone else's platform in the future. It makes sense. Meta has lost billions of dollars because Apple killed the tracking API that Meta relied on. Next up, Mark talks about the combined power of AR and VR, and I think it's interesting. Let's take a listen.
I think what you ideally have is glasses. And through the glasses, there's one part of it where the glasses, they can see what you see and they can hear what you hear, and in doing so, they can be kind of the perfect AI assistant for you because they have context on what you're doing. But then part of that is also that the glasses can project images, basically like holograms, out into the world.
So Mark makes an interesting point here that an AI assistant could be so much more effective if it had more contextual awareness, and that awareness could come from an AR or VR headset. Perhaps this is the killer AI use case that all these companies should be spending their billions of R&D dollars on. It certainly sounds more useful than the current chatbots. However, he talks about projecting holograms out into the world. That sounds like a recipe for disaster. I could see that getting out of control, people tripping over things. People could become dependent on that experience and would not be willing to leave the house without it. It sounds like the perfect mental illness generating machine. Yikes, I don't know about that. But let's move on. Here's another clip where Mark makes the point that I 100% agree with.
It's one of the things that I observed as soon as I came out to the Valley, that all these companies that called themselves technology companies were not really set up that way. Right? It's like the companies I was talking about, it's like they the CEO wasn't technical, the board of directors had no one technical on it. They had like one dude on the management team who was the head of engineering who was technical, and like everyone else wasn't. And it's like, all right, if that's your team, then you're not a technology company. So I think one of the things that I've always been pretty careful about is I actually like want like a lot of the people on our management team. It's like split. It's mostly people running either these big product groups who come up through different technical pathways at the company. And I think that there's like a balance, right? It's like you don't want everyone to be an engineer because there's other things that matter too.
I totally agree with Zuckerberg here. Unfortunately, there are far too many, I'll just say, quote, manager types within a lot of tech companies at all levels. And that happens because the universe of managers is a lot bigger than the universe of people with actual tech talent who have that talent at a deep level. Technology is a dense topic and it takes remarkable people to understand it and build it. And if you consider your company to be a tech company, you have to have tech talent throughout the leadership of your company. Next up, Mark talks about the culture of speed versus the culture of perfection. Here we go.
There are a lot of great engineering organizations that try to build things that are super high quality and have good competence around that. But I don't know, there's a certain personality that goes with kind of taking your stuff and putting it out there before it's fully polished. And look, I'm not saying that our strategy or approach on this is the only one that works. I think in a lot of ways we're like the opposite of Apple, and clearly their stuff has worked really well too.
I think this is an apt description at a high level of the differences between Meta and Apple. But I'll add that there are some negatives to Mark's go fast approach, which he's well known for. And I think Meta has actually seen some of these downsides. Namely, you could really hurt your brand by releasing stuff that isn't ready. When you do that, you lose power in the marketplace and you lose the opportunity to control the market the way you'd like to. But there are some benefits, and Zuckerberg seems focused on those, and that's that you can be first in many areas, and moving first in technology is often a big advantage, but it's not the only advantage. There are many examples where the first to move lost out, but clearly Mark wants to be first. And I'll wrap this video up by tying back to my video from yesterday. Why are so many companies continuing to make VR headsets? It's losing money for Meta for years. Apple hasn't seen a huge demand for the Apple Vision Pro. Here is Mark's opinion.
I mean, well, I think some of the stuff, by the time you're at the scale that we're at, is also just about like, what do you want to do over the next 10 to 20 years? And what do you think are going to be important? And we were talking about like making your own luck and all that, and how it's like I think there are some broad strokes that we can have a sense of where things are going. I'm pretty sure glasses and kind of like holographic presence and AR is going to be a completely ubiquitous product, right? It's just like everyone who had a phone before replaced it with a smartphone, and then a lot of more people got smartphones. If all we get is all the people in the world who already have glasses upgrading to glasses that have AI in them, then like this is already going to be one of the most successful products in the history of the world.
So I wish I'd seen this clip before my video from yesterday. I think Mark's thinking falls right in line with what I mentioned. These big tech companies are looking for the next big computing platform, and many players think it could be VR or AR, and they're terrified of being left out. So that is about it for my take on this interview. I feel for Zuckerberg a little bit in this setting. There was some natural awkwardness in the setup, and I think the hosts are getting their interview sea legs. But overall, I was glad to watch this and get just a taste of what the leader of Meta is thinking. And with that, I'll leave it there. As always, thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.